Hello, Namaskar. This is Firstpost and you're watching Vantage with me, Palki Sharma. Day 5 of the war in West Asia, Israel has killed Iran's top commander again. Iran is firing back missiles. Will this be over soon or will this turn into a bigger war? That depends on Donald Trump. He's left the G7 summit in Canada to return to his Situation Room in Washington. He's asked everyone to evacuate Tehran immediately. What does this signal? How are Iran and Israel poised for a longer conflict? Who has more military muscle? And what does a war like this cost? As of today, Israel is spending $725 million a day to target Iran, $725 million a day. Also, what is Netanyahu's end game here? Meanwhile, world leaders are in Canada for the G7 summit. We'll tell you why this is a group fighting for relevance. What is causing turbulence in the skies? Why are Indian carriers cancelling flights left, right and centre? What are the top sources of news for the world today? Social media beats television and websites. What has triggered anti-tourism protests in Europe? And is your air fryer spying on you? All this and more coming up. The headlines first. Taiwan tests a sea drone capable of carrying bombs. It's a big boost to the self-ruled island's military firepower against Beijing. China claims Taiwan is part of its territory. As Beijing builds pressure, Taipei has increased its investments in aerial and maritime drones. Chinese President Xi Jinping attends a summit in Kazakhstan and meets Central Asian leaders. This is President Xi's second trip to the region in less than a year. China is competing with Russia for influence there. The region is rich in natural resources and strategically located. A bomb threat diverts a plane carrying hundreds of Hajj pilgrims. They were returning from Jeddah in Saudi Arabia and headed towards Jakarta. The aircraft was diverted to a city on Sumatra Island after an email threatened to blow up the Saudi Airlines flight. Two oil tankers collide off the UAE, sparking a fire. At least 24 crew members have been rescued. This incident took place close to the strategic Strait of Hormuz. This comes amid escalating tensions between nearby Iran and Israel. Kenya's Deputy Inspector General of Police says he will quote-unquote step aside as investigations begin into a blogger's death while in custody. The incident has led to protests and widespread outrage. The blogger was arrested over his social media posts, which accused the officer of corruption. And Thailand moves a step closer to hosting Formula One in Bangkok. The Thai cabinet formally approves a government plan to do so. The bid is reportedly worth more than $1 billion and proposes that races be held in the Thai capital from 2028 to 2032. It was just another day at the IRIB, the Islamic Republic of Iran Broadcasting, that's Iran State TV. It was Monday evening. A live broadcast was on. The anchor was reading her bulletin. Suddenly, everything shook. The anchor left her seat and ran away with the camera rolling. I'm sure you know what happened here. It was an Israeli strike. Israel targeted Iran State TV. Multiple blasts were heard. The lights went out. The building was on fire. Several broadcasts were interrupted. And one staff member was even killed.
I was on the first floor when the bombing happened. I don't know how many of my colleagues were martyred or how many were injured. They had told us to evacuate the area, but everyone stayed until the last moment to show the world the image of Iran's power, something the Zionist regime doesn't want. This is the result of their miscalculation. Did they think hitting the IRIB would achieve anything? They will see worse.
Israel says that the state TV building was not just a media center, it was a military communication hub. It was helping coordinate missile launches. That is Israel's justification for attacking it, but Iran says it is a war crime. Meanwhile, Israel is doubling down. It is going after top Iranian leaders. Last week, Israel killed 3 top Iranian commanders, including their army chief. The army chief of Iran was killed last week on Friday. Tehran quickly appointed a replacement, a new wartime military chief. Today, Israel killed him too. His name is Ali Shamdani. Shamdani headed the Khatam al-Anbiya Central Headquarters. This is Iran's military emergency command. And he was appointed just 4 days ago. Because like I said, last week, Israel killed this man, Gholam Ali Rashid. He was in charge of the command, killed on June 13th. So Ali Shamdani was appointed. He was said to be very close to the Iranian supreme leader, which is why he was chosen for this post. But now Israel has eliminated him too.
He was eliminated at the Iranian regime's headquarters in the heart of Tehran. Shamdani served as the chief of staff of the Iranian regime's armed forces and the man closest to Iran's supreme leader. He was appointed to replace the previous chief of staff, Gholam Ali Rashid, whom we also killed in the opening blow of the operation. Shamdani only managed to hold the position for 4 days, and we also eliminated him.
Today is day 5 of the Iran-Israel war. The attacks are escalating on both sides. Israel is striking deep into Iran and Iran is hitting right back. And with every passing day, it looks worse. Last night and this morning, Israel targeted many sites in western Iran. There were explosions in Tabriz. It's a city in western Iran, also home to a major Air Force base. Just hours ago, 2 explosions were heard in central Tehran. Until now, Israeli attacks have killed 224 people in Iran. 224 people killed, another 1,200 are wounded. Iran has cancelled the leaves of all its doctors and nurses. They've all been asked to report to duty immediately. Meanwhile, in Israel, loud booms were heard in Tel Aviv and Jerusalem. Iranian missiles struck Herzliya. It's a commercial hub located in central Israel. There were no casualties, but videos show a massive cloud of black smoke. The fire service rushed to put out the blaze. Iran says it has also struck a Mossad center. Mossad is Israel's top spy agency. Tehran claims it was hit by their missiles. Israel is yet to comment on this claim. But their casualty figure is rising. 24 people killed in Israel, nearly 600 injured. So both sides continue to trade fire. And today, Donald Trump jumped in with a warning. This is what he said, the US president, and I'm quoting, "Iran should have signed the deal I told them to sign. What a shame and waste of human life." Simply stated, Iran cannot have a nuclear weapon. I said it over and over again. Everyone should immediately evacuate Tehran. Everyone should evacuate Tehran immediately. That is what Donald Trump is saying. Tehran, of course, is the capital of Iran. It's a city of around 17 million people, including the suburbs, 17 million. That makes it one of the largest cities in the world. Now, Trump may have issued this ominous warning, but to what end? Where do these 17 million people go? Thousands were seen fleeing the capital, with massive traffic jams clogging the roads out of Tehran. So many people are trying to move away from the Iranian capital, and that includes Indian students. There are around 1,500 of them in Iran, 1,500 Indian students, most of them from Jammu and Kashmir. They go there to study medicine. Hundreds of them were moved to safer zones like Qom. It's a city located around 140 kilometers from Tehran. The airspace over Iran is currently closed, so the only option for evacuation is through land borders. And that is what India is trying to do now. 110 students were evacuated from the border with Armenia. They will fly back home tomorrow. More such evacuations will continue in the coming days. Earlier today, Firstpost spoke to one such student who is stranded in Iran. Here's what he said about the evacuation operations.
When did you hear about the Indian evacuation orders and the notices that were issued by the Indian embassy? And once you got to know about those notices, what did you and your friends in Tehran do?
Everybody, when we got to know that we are being relocated to Qom, everybody started packing the essential stuff, and then we were communicating with the embassy members. They were very, very, very helpful to us. In fact, the university as well, they were very helpful in arranging the buses to us and relocating us to Qom, providing us with hotels and food and everything here.
So that's the situation on the ground. But what is happening behind the scenes? Will diplomacy finally prevail? Israel remains adamant. It says it is changing the face of West Asia.
You're changing the face of the Middle East, and this can lead to far-reaching changes even within Iran itself.
Meanwhile, US President Donald Trump says he wants a real end. What does that even mean? What is a real end? Well, listen to his statement.
Can you elaborate?
Looking at better than ceasefire. We're not looking for a ceasefire. I didn't say I was looking for a ceasefire. That was Emmanuel, nice guy, but he doesn't get it right too often. But we're looking for better than a ceasefire.
What specifically is better than a ceasefire?
An end, a real end, not a ceasefire. An end, or giving up entirely. That's okay too.
Are you close there? Is that possible in the next 24 months?
Why not? Certainly possible. Complete give up. That's possible.
So Trump is demanding a complete give up by Iran. But is that possible? He says it is. But as things stand, the Iran-Israel war is entering a new phase. One where there are fewer red lines and higher stakes. The question is not just when it ends. The question is how it ends and at what cost. Everyone is asking the obvious question, like what happens next? Will this end after some tit-for-tat strikes, or will this turn into a bigger war? Also, what does a bigger war even look like? Well, that depends on the United States, on US President Donald Trump. Yesterday, he was in Canada for the G7 summit. He was supposed to be there today as well, but he's not. Trump has cut short his trip. After the G7 dinner, he returned to the US. The reason? To deal with the war in West Asia. Trump convened his National Security Council. Before leaving, he posted a message. It said, and I'm quoting, I've told you about this, Iran cannot have a nuclear weapon. I said it over and over again. Everyone should evacuate Tehran immediately. As far as evacuation orders go, this was not ideal. When you say everyone evacuate immediately, you're adding chaos to an already chaotic situation. You're fueling panic. Also, look at where he posted it. On Truth Social. I'm not sure how many people in Iran use it. Either way, this is what Trump said. Then we heard from French President Emmanuel Macron. He threw more light on the situation.
There's an offer that has been made, especially to have a ceasefire and to initiate broader discussions. And I think this is a very good thing.
Macron said Trump was proposing a ceasefire. Big mistake. Trump unloaded on the French president. He said Macron was just seeking publicity. He also rejected the talk of a ceasefire. Instead, Trump says he's planning something much bigger. Now, what would that be? The US attacking Iran? The US putting diplomatic pressure? Or something else? Now, some reports say that Trump was eyeing talks through his West Asia envoy Steve Witkoff. Apparently, Trump wanted Witkoff to meet Iran's foreign minister, but later Trump denied that. He said he had not reached out to Iran. He also says he is not in the mood to negotiate.
I told them to do the deal. They should have done the deal. Their cities have been blown to pieces. They've lost a lot of people. They should have done the deal. I told them do the deal. So I don't know. I'm not too much in a mood to negotiate now.
Now, there are two red flags here. The first is Trump leaving the G7 summit early. He had meetings slated for today, so why would he suddenly pack up and leave? And secondly, the evacuation order is strange. Israel too has been asking people to leave Tehran, but why would Trump join in? It makes you wonder what is coming next. Add to that America's military moves. Donald Trump has moved an aircraft carrier from Southeast Asia to West Asia. It's called the USS Nimitz. This carrier holds 5,000 US personnel. It is also carrying 60 aircraft, 60 aircraft. Now, we told you about this redeployment yesterday. The US is also moving refueling planes to Europe. Some 31 of them, 31 planes, took off on Sunday. They are being stationed at air bases across Europe, in Germany, in the UK, in Greece, and in Estonia. These are basically tanker planes. They can refuel fighter jets in the air. Say you're flying beyond the range of your fighter plane. Then these tankers are absolutely vital. They extend your flying range. Does this mean the US is preparing for long-range operations? The Pentagon says not yet. The Pentagon, of course, is the US Defense Ministry. Some Israeli reports claim that the US military was striking Iran, but the Pentagon has denied it. They said the American posture was defensive. Of course, Israel would like to change that. They need America's help to target Iran's nuclear bunkers, specifically the one at Fordo. Fordo is located near the city of Qom. It is Iran's second uranium enrichment site. More importantly, it is built on the side of a mountain. Now, this facility sits below 80 meters of rock and soil. It is also guarded by Iranian and Russian air defenses. So Israel alone cannot penetrate it. They do not have the weapons to do so. Enter the United States. America has powerful bombs that can bust bunkers. Experts say only one bomb can do the job. The GBU-57AB. It's a 13,000 kilogram bomb. 13,000 kilos. It can penetrate up to 61 meters before exploding. Only the Americans have this bomb. They call it the MOAB, the mother of all bombs. They dropped it on Afghanistan in 2017. That was the first time it was used in combat. Israel needs this bomb to hit Fordo, but the Americans have not given the bomb yet to the Israelis. And that's not the only problem that Israel faces. They don't have the bomb. Only one plane is configured to carry and drop this bomb, and that is America's B-2 bomber. Again, Israel does not have this plane. So long story short, Israel needs America's help to destroy Fordo. Which brings us back to the question we started with. What does a bigger war look like? In simple words, it looks like an American intervention. If the US joins the war, Iran will widen its attacks. So far, Iran has only hit Israeli cities. But if Trump joins, Iran would hit American bases too. The US has 19 military facilities across West Asia. Together, they host around 50,000 soldiers. Will Trump risk all of this to help Israel? Remember, he campaigned as the no-war candidate. His support base is urging him to be isolationist. So will Donald Trump ignore them to join the war? That is the big question. It's arguably the biggest decision of Trump's career. If he joins this war, all bets are off. Iran is likely to close off the Strait of Hormuz. This water body carries 20% of the world's oil. It passes through here, 20% of the world's oil. If you shut that off, oil prices will skyrocket. And don't forget the pressure from West Asian allies. The Arab countries may not want Trump to intervene. It will put their assets on Iran's hit list. I'm sure the US president will consider all these variables. He has enough leverage to end this war. It is a question of will. So Israel and Iran are at war. There is talk of a ceasefire, although right now it feels remote. But can they sustain a long war? How do their militaries compare, and who's got more muscle? Let's take a look, starting with Iran. On the face of it, Iran looks strong. Its army has 600,000 troops, plus the IRGC has 200,000 men. That's the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps, the IRGC. They are the guardians of the regime. They're much more powerful than the military. In many ways, they are the ones who call the shots in Iran. Together with the military, that's 800,000 men that Iran has. Of course, there are no women. This is Iran after all. So yes, they have the numbers. But what about the firepower? Not the best, to say the least. Israeli strikes have exposed them, particularly in the skies. Israel blinded Iran's air defenses and killed their generals. Even the capital city of Tehran was not spared. Can Iran conduct airstrikes like Israel? Well, not really. The Iranian fleet has around 350 antiquated planes. Most of these are old American planes bought before the Islamic Revolution of 1979. That's when the US and Iran were friends. So Tehran got American weapons and jets. Now it has 4-decade-old planes. But Tehran does have other options, like the capability to build a large number of missiles and drones. In fact, since the beginning of this conflict, Iran has been firing missiles at will. Most were intercepted, but some did land. And they caused considerable damage. Tehran has over 3,000 ballistic missiles. All of them can travel as far as Tel Aviv. That's what a US general has told American lawmakers, in 2022. And Iran is well known for its drones too, especially the Shahid drone, which is a suicide drone. It is designed to crash into the target and explode. Iran supplied a large number of these drones to Russia. They have proven to be deadly against Ukraine, and now they're deploying the same drones against Israel. So men, missiles, and drones, these are Iran's assets to directly strike Israel. Having said that, their real weapon is their network, their regional proxies. The Hezbollah in Lebanon, the Houthis in Yemen, and Hamas in Gaza. For decades, Iran has nurtured them. They have given Tehran effective deterrence, but this weapon is now blunted. Thanks to Israel's relentless military campaigns, they've been attacking Iranian proxies, Gaza, Lebanon, and Yemen. In all these places, the Israelis have been attacking. Israel has systematically degraded Iran's proxy network. It has killed the top leaders of Hamas and Hezbollah. It has been attacking the Houthis in Yemen. And the result is this: Iran has lost strategic depth. Its defenses have gaping holes. And it has no option but to fight back.
The Zionist enemy, according to the experience of the past 75 years and considering various military and non-military reasons and various dimensions, strategically speaking, does not have the possibility of resisting and enduring a long war, and therefore this regime and this Zionist enemy will be defeated in the continuation of this imposed war.
Now let's take a look at Israel. It has a smaller military, but it's far more advanced. Israel has around 170,000 active troops plus another 400,000 in reserve. So while Iran has more boots on the ground, Israel's forces are battle-hardened. They have fought multiple wars. They're trained for high-intensity combat. Israel's real edge, however, is defense technology. It is one of the most modern armies in the region. Its weapons come from the US and Europe. It also has a strong defense manufacturing base. Israel builds its own missiles, drones, and defense systems. From tanks to submarines, it makes almost every advanced weapon at home, and that gives it an edge in sustaining long conflicts. In the air, Israel has unmatched superiority. It has more than 600 warplanes and choppers, including the American F-35 jets. It is one of the world's most advanced fighter planes. These jets are hard to detect and they strike with precision. On land, Israel can field modern tanks and armored vehicles. At sea, it can operate missile ships and submarines. So Israel can fight on multiple fronts at the same time. And then they have the Iron Dome. Before this war, it almost had a cult status. The Iron Dome was seen as one of the most effective air defense systems. But Iran has managed to challenge it. Over the weekend, Iranian rockets breached Israeli air defenses. Despite those setbacks, Israel is on solid ground, and that's because of American support. It's their ATM for cash and defense equipment. In fact, the U.S. is sending more tankers and warships. We told you about the aircraft carrier USS Nimitz. It is now in the region with 5,000 personnel and over 60 warplanes. Plus, the U.S. has 19 military bases in the region. They have multiple warships deployed here. The USS Carl Vinson in the Arabian Sea, which is an aircraft carrier. The USS Princeton, a guided missile cruiser, and 3 destroyers, USS Milius, USS Sterett, and USS Wayne E. Mayer. And now the Americans are adding more, signaling a clear backup for Israel.
I warn the Iranian dictator from continuing to commit war crimes and fire missiles at Israeli citizens. He should remember what happened to the dictator in the country neighboring Iran who took this path against the state of Israel. We will continue today as well to operate against regime targets and military targets in Tehran, as we did against the Propaganda and Incitement Broadcasting Authority.
So that's the war, the two sides in this war. Iran with its numbers, missiles and network of proxies, and Israel with its weapons, technology and support of the world's largest army and economy. Neither side is ready to blink first. Israel is a tiny country. It has been at war for almost 2 years now, fighting on multiple fronts, hitting targets in Gaza, defending its northern border with Lebanon, firing missiles at the Houthis in Yemen, striking targets in Syria, and now it has opened a new front with Iran. Who is bankrolling these wars? How much do they cost to Israel and to the world? We'll start with Israel. It is spending close to $725 million every single day. $725 million every day. And this is just for the war with Iran. And this data comes from a former Israeli defense officer. He used to advise Israel's chief of staff on military finances. According to him, for the first 2 days of combat with Iran, Israel spent nearly $1.5 billion. That's the cost of conducting strikes deep inside Iran. It includes the flight hours for the warplanes and the weapons. And just the offensive part cost around $593 million. The rest of the money was spent on defense, stuff like missile interceptions and movement of troops into position. These are the visible costs of war. But here's what's harder to measure. The indirect hits on Israel, the loss for businesses, the drop in productivity and the economic slowdown. These costs are hard to measure because the war is still unfolding. In fact, the war in Gaza has already left a huge dent on Israel's economy. As of last year, the Gaza conflict had cost Israel more than $66 billion. That includes both military and civilian costs. It covers airstrikes, ground operations, also human costs, like housing for thousands of Israelis displaced by the war, repairs, reconstruction, and basic services. All of it costs money. Now, to put that number in perspective, 66 billion is about 12% of Israel's entire economy. That is the loss they've suffered. That is how much money they've had to spend. Last year, it left a mark on Israel's finances too. The budget deficit widened. A deficit is the gap between the government's spending and revenue, what it spends versus what it earns. If the deficit widens, the government ends up taking more loans. It has to borrow more money to meet its expenses. Before the war, Israel's deficit was at 4%. Last year, it shot up to 8%, meaning the spending is 8% more than the earning. And remember, Israel is one of the most militarized states in the world. It is built to counter serious security challenges. But these conflicts have pushed Israel to its limits. The longer these wars drag on, the higher will be the costs. And not just for Israel, but for the entire world, because look at Israel's neighborhood. It is the top source of oil in the world. And with this region in conflict, oil prices are climbing again. Right after Israel struck targets inside Iran, oil prices shot up. Traders were nervous, and with good reason. If this war leads to a full-blown blockade, oil prices could cross $100 a barrel, and that spike will impact everyone from individuals to industries. The costs will be passed down across the board. Fuel could become more expensive. Food supplies could be hit. And that's because to transport food, you need fuel. And oil is just one part of the story. Supply chains are already being disrupted. More than 80% of container ships, 80% of container ships are avoiding the Red Sea. They are taking the longer route around Africa. This adds up to 13 days in their travel schedule per voyage, and an extra $1 million in fuel and operating costs. This will slow everything down. From electronics to essential goods, global shipping capacity has dropped by 15%. That's because ships are taking too long to return. And it's the same story in the skies as well. Israel and Iran have closed their airspace. So have Iraq and Jordan. Several airlines have cancelled flights. Others are rerouting to avoid the danger. And that means longer flight times, higher costs for airlines, and higher ticket prices for you. So yes, wars cost money, a cost that Israel seems willing to pay, but the rest of the world did not sign up for this. It is taking a toll not just on the battlefield, but also on the balance sheets, on supply lines, and on the global economy. Israel's war with Iran is no longer a regional conflict. It is a global shockwave that no one is insulated from. So it is a costly affair, but this time the stakes feel different. The official reason is Iran's nuclear program, to stop it before it builds a bomb. But the statements from Israel hint at a bigger goal: regime change. Look at Benjamin Netanyahu, the Prime Minister of Israel. He is calling this an operation similar to removing cancer.
It's like cancer. You know you have cancer that's going to kill you. You remove the cancer. You also undergo treatments, and it might come back one day. But I believe we're keeping it away, let's say for a long, long time. I can't go into details because we have good assessments and we don't stop. We have more goals. And we are really going to do a root canal here.
So who's the tumor here? For Israel, it is the Iranian regime, Supreme Leader Ayatollah Khamenei. Netanyahu wants to get rid of him, and it's not something that he's been subtle about. In the last 48 hours, Netanyahu has spoken to multiple media agencies, and everywhere he said the same thing.
Officials tell us that the president flatly rejected a plan, an opportunity that the Israelis had to take out the supreme leader. Do you understand his concern? My understanding is his concern is that this would escalate the conflict beyond where it is already.
It's not going to escalate the conflict. It's going to end the conflict.
So the Israeli Prime Minister wants a regime change. He believes killing Khamenei will end this war. Reports suggest Israel even came up with a plan to kill Iran's supreme leader, but apparently US President Trump vetoed it. And even now, he's not convinced about the idea. That's what reports say. But why does Netanyahu keep pushing for it, for regime change in Tehran? To understand that, Let me show you a policy paper. It is called A Clean Break, a new strategy for securing the realm. It's popularly known as the Clean Break Report. It was published by a study group in 1996. That's when Netanyahu became Prime Minister for the first time, 1996. And he endorsed this report. The thesis itself is complicated, but what it offers as an idea is quite simple. Israel should abandon the old model of containment. Israel should embrace preemptive strikes, disruption, and yes, regime change. Basically, Israel should reshape West Asia to its liking. This idea was proposed in 1996, and it has stayed with Netanyahu. On his watch, it has also shaped decades of Israeli policy. Look at Netanyahu's statements over the years. In 2002, he sat before the US Congress and made a case for war in Iraq. He argued that Saddam Hussein was a problem. Remove him and democracy would bloom.
And this is a tyrant who is feverishly trying to acquire nuclear weapons. And today the United States must destroy the same regime because a nuclear-armed Saddam will place the security of our entire world at risk. It is simply not reflecting the reality to assume that Saddam isn't feverishly working to develop nuclear weapons as we speak. If you take out Saddam's regime, I guarantee you that it will have enormous positive reverberations on the region.
Fast forward 20 years and that speech has aged like milk. Iraq is still limping through the aftermath of regime change. It is still divided and volatile. But that doesn't matter to Netanyahu. He is recycling that same old strategy, this time with Iran in his crosshairs.
I warn the Iranian dictator from continuing to commit war crimes and fire missiles at Israeli citizens. He should remember what happened to the dictator in the country neighboring Iran who took this path against the state of Israel. We will continue today as well to operate against regime targets and military targets in Tehran, as we did against the propaganda and incitement broadcasting authority.
And the nuclear rhetoric is not new. Netanyahu has been talking about Iran getting a nuclear bomb for at least 2 decades now. He has warned about it. He has issued ultimatums, and he has made multiple such speeches.
Whose true character has been unmasked should not acquire nuclear weapons. Where should a red line be drawn? A red line should be drawn right here. Before Iran completes the second stage of nuclear enrichment, Iran's regime poses a grave threat not only to Israel, but also to the peace of the entire world.
So what's new this time? Well, this time Israel has everything it needs: the nuclear rhetoric, the big enemy, and a government in the United States that supports them. But what happens after the bombs? That's the big question here. Because if the regime falls, democracy may not replace it. In fact, history suggests something worse might emerge. Iraq after Saddam, Libya after Gaddafi, Syria after Assad lost control of half the country. Power vacuums do not last, especially in West Asia, where they are filled by militias, warlords, and chaos. So why do it then? Why drag the region into a full-blown war? Why is Netanyahu gambling everything? Because for the Israeli Prime Minister, this is not just geopolitics, this is about his legacy. Netanyahu is Israel's longest-serving prime minister. He has survived indictments, protests, political betrayals, even a temporary ouster. Each time he has clawed his way back. But now he's boxed in by scandal at home and isolation abroad. So he's going for broke. This could be his last chance to change the course of West Asia, his last chance to secure his name in Israeli history forever. But you see, history is not a campaign speech. Even if Khamenei falls, Iran won't become a docile neighbor overnight. If anything, it could unleash a generation of hardliners. And if the regime holds now, Netanyahu may have handed it the greatest gift of all: a unifying threat to rally against, a justification for nuclear ambition. So again, What is Netanyahu's endgame? Maybe he believes there doesn't have to be one. Maybe he's counting on chaos being better than control. Maybe he's mistaking force for strategy. But history has a way of turning hunters into architects of their own nightmares. And maybe that is the real legacy Netanyahu leaves behind. Let's turn to Canada now, which is hosting this year's G7 summit. It's a two-day event in Calgary. The first day was devoted to members of the G7. Today, it's all about the invitees. In total, 7 non-members have been invited to this summit. Prime Minister Modi of India, President Zelensky of Ukraine, President Claudia Sheinbaum of Mexico, President Lula of Brazil, President Lee of South Korea, Prime Minister Albanese of Australia, and President Ramaphosa of South Africa. 7 non-members. This is part of the G7's outreach. They're hoping to make this group more representative of today. And we'll get to that in a bit. But first, let's look at what happened at the summit. 3 main issues were on the agenda: Ukraine, West Asia, and trade. Since 2022, the G7 has imposed sanctions on Russia. They've largely been united on this issue, but not with Donald Trump in the room. The US president says it was a mistake to remove Russia from the group.
G7 used to be the G8. Barack Obama and a person named Trudeau didn't want to have Russia in. And I would say that that was a mistake, because I think you wouldn't have a war right now if you had Russia in. And you wouldn't have a war right now if Trump were president 4 years ago.
Now, to give you some background, the G7 used to be G8, as you heard Trump say. The 8th member was Russia. But in 2014, Russia annexed Crimea from Ukraine. And in protest, Russia was removed. Trump is calling that a mistake. The next issue was the war in West Asia. Initial reports said Trump would not sign the joint statement. But as it turned out, he did. And here's what it said, the joint statement. We affirm that Israel has a right to defend itself. We have been consistently clear that Iran can never have a nuclear weapon. We urge that the resolution of the Iranian crisis leads to a broader de-escalation of hostilities in the Middle East. So no calls for restraint, no calls for a ceasefire, just a generic demand to de-escalate. Which brings us to the final issue, and that is trade. All G7 countries are looking to strike deals with Trump. One of them succeeded yesterday, and that is the UK.
Thank you very much. We all know the great Prime Minister of the UK, and we just signed a document. This is, sorry about that. This is it.
A very important document.
Fumble aside, this is good news for Keir Starmer. Leaders from Canada and Japan also held talks with Donald Trump, but they could not walk away with a deal. Frankly, this was a throwback to Trump's first term. Back then, too, he had issues with the G7. He said other member nations were not pulling their weight. In the second term, those differences have sharpened. Some are calling it the G6 versus Trump. Which brings us to today, day 2 of the G7 summit, which is basically G7 plus. Prime Minister Modi will be joining the summit today. He is slated to address the G7 outreach group. He will also be meeting the Canadian Prime Minister, and that meeting will be crucial. Ties between India and Canada are near rock bottom. This trip could be a chance to reset things. But standing in the way are the Khalistanis. They have organized massive protests in Calgary. They are being led by the Sikhs for Justice. That's a Khalistani group, Sikhs for Justice. And what is their plan? To ambush Prime Minister Modi. That's the word they've used, ambush him. Thankfully, the summit venue is located away from the city, so we haven't seen any ambushes yet. Nonetheless, this will be a crucial day. As for the G7 itself, it is fighting a battle for relevance. This group dates back to the 1970s. At first, it had only 6 members. It was G6. The US, the UK, Japan, France, Italy, and West Germany. Eventually, more nations joined. Canada in 1976 and Russia in 1997. Back then, these were the biggest economies in the world. They also had a common politics. And don't be surprised, in 1997, even Russia was seen as a close US partner. So this group had political unity and financial power. Cut to 2025, and that is missing. Financial power has certainly reduced. The G8, with Russia included, made up 47% of the global GDP back in 2002. Compare that to the BRICS group. Today, the G7 make up just 29%, from 48 to 29%. Now compare that to the BRICS group. In 2002, BRICS nations made up 24% of the global GDP. Today, they make up more than 36%. The fact is, the G7 does not represent the biggest economies of the world anymore. China is the second largest by GDP. India is at number 5. Together, they also make up nearly 3 billion people, India and China. So on paper, BRICS is more relevant than G7. On paper. But in practice, it's not that simple. Other than Donald Trump, the G7 is largely united. We saw that with the joint statement on West Asia. Yes, it was weak, but it was signed off by everyone. You won't see that in BRICS. And that is where the G7 holds the edge. A weaker but united group can do a lot of things. A bigger but divided group cannot. Of course, India won't mind this because we have a seat at both tables. Indian aviation is in crisis mode. Almost a week after the deadly Air India crash, flights are being cancelled across the board. 7 Air India flights were grounded just today. Out of these, 6 aircraft were Dreamliners, the same model that crashed in Ahmedabad last week. Air India says it is offering full refunds. It is also providing hotel stays and free rescheduling. But the impact is widespread. An Indigo flight made an emergency landing today. It was on its way to Delhi from Muscat when it received a bomb threat. It turned out to be a hoax. Indian carriers are now facing a full-scale stress test. Meanwhile, the investigation into the Air India crash is still on. Here's a report.
Indian skies are turbulent. This time, the danger isn't just weather. It's fear. Panic has gripped airports after the deadly Air India crash last week. Over 240 people lost their lives after a Boeing 787 Dreamliner went down in Ahmedabad. And since that day, nothing has been the same. Airlines across the country are taking no chances. Flights are being canceled by the dozen. Today alone, 7 international flights from Air India were grounded. Most of them were meant to fly on the same model that crashed, the Dreamliner. The reasons are technical glitches and aircraft unavailability, but also an abundance of caution. There's a full-blown review underway, and Air India says it is trying to minimize the impact on passengers. Stranded flyers are being given hotel stays, full refunds, free rescheduling if they choose so, and promises of alternative arrangements. But the disruption is widespread, and it's not just about one carrier. India's largest airline, Indigo, was forced to make an emergency landing. A flight from Muscat to Delhi got diverted to Nagpur. There was a bomb threat. The plane was searched. Nothing was found, but the message is clear: tensions are high. Every crew is on alert, and every incident is being taken seriously. As the investigation into the Air India crash continues, authorities have recovered both black boxes. They'll reveal what the pilots said and how the engines performed, what was heard in the cockpit, what warnings were issued, and whether any distress signal was sent. This data could hold the key to preventing future tragedies. India's aviation watchdog has swung into action. It's asked for pilot training records and launched a full review of Air India's fleet of Dreamliners, all 33 of them. Every jet is being inspected, and every maintenance record re-examined. Beyond that, a high-level government panel has been formed. Its job is to find out what went wrong, and to suggest how India can better respond to future aviation emergencies. The committee has 3 months to file a preliminary report, 3 months to rebuild trust in the system. Indian aviation has grown rapidly in recent years. There are more routes, more planes, more passengers. As the industry expands, so must the security standards. The crash of the Dreamliner raised global alarms, and now, mass cancellations are causing confusion and delays. These incidents point to the pressure on India's aviation system. The focus now is on strengthening oversight, reviewing safety protocols. It's not just about one airline or one plane. It's about reinforcing the entire system, so passengers can keep flying with confidence.
News media has changed a lot. Decades ago, people would huddle around radios or crowd around a television, all in the hope of catching the news. It was rare and powerful. But today, the news is everywhere. Podcasters are journalists, influencers are reporters, keyboard warriors are experts, and this is where most people get their news from. Says who? A new survey on news consumers. It found that 54% Americans got their news online from Facebook, from X, or from YouTube. This is higher than television. 50% for television, 48% for websites and news apps. So simply put, social media is now the top source of news in America. It has overtaken television and websites. And within these, podcasters do extremely well. I'm sure you know Joe Rogan, or you've heard of him. 22% Americans got their news from his podcasts. And it's not just the US. The survey covered other countries too, including India. In India, 55% people access news on YouTube, 46% on WhatsApp, and 37% on Instagram. Put together, online media is at 76%, social media at 46%, television is at 45%, and newspapers at 39%. So it's the same story as the US. More people are getting news from online platforms. They're turning away from TV and newspapers. Now, just to be clear, this does not mean that legacy news companies have disappeared. Many of them, in fact, have shifted online. So their audience is part of the numbers that you see. It's not all podcasters and influencers. And we'll decode that trend in a bit, but first some more numbers. Artificial intelligence is slowly climbing. A few people are using AI bots to get the news now. Globally, this number is just around 7%. But among younger people, it is 15%. In India, people are quite comfortable with AI. Nearly 20% of them use chat bots to access the news. 20% news consumers. All these numbers suggest major changes in the media landscape. The question is, what will be the impact? We'll focus on three of them, three possible impacts. Number one, more polarization. Social media tends to operate in echo chambers. A Trump supporter will watch Joe Rogan, but a Trump critic may not. Because in social media, the focus is more on political opinion, not facts of the matter. As a result, these two camps may drift further apart. In other words, more polarization. That is impact number one. Number two, misinformation. Yes, mainstream media is also guilty of this, but there is still some accountability. For random social media accounts, that is not true. There is no accountability. They don't spread fake news by accident. They spread it on purpose. Because misinformation tends to go viral and gather views. That's the second impact. And finally, impact number three, the impact on jobs. Big news companies are already struggling to stay afloat. Layoffs are common in this industry. Imagine adding AI to the mix. One app could do the work of 10 employees. It's quicker, but is it better? Most journalists would say it is not. I know a lot of people will be worried by these impacts. They may see it as an existential threat to mainstream media, but there is a silver lining. For instance, seeing is not believing. Yes, more people are getting news from social media, but that does not mean they trust it. Almost 53% Indians feel that WhatsApp is the biggest fake news threat. Globally, 47% people see influencers the same way, higher than any other source. So my point is, there is a credibility crisis online and mainstream media can capitalize on it. How do they do it? By being where the consumer is, online. Again, look at the numbers. 57% Indians use their phones to catch the news. 76% use their computers and 47% use their tablets. All three of these are geared for online consumption. So the brief is quite clear. Be where the consumer is. Make changes to your output format, configure it for online use, and finally focus on credibility. Those who adapt will survive this crisis. Those that refuse may not. When you think of a European holiday, what is it that comes to mind? Maybe cocktails by the beach or spending the day at museums. But have you ever thought of the flip side? What if you visit Europe and witness anger instead? Think squirt guns in Spain, noisy suitcases in Italy, handmade effigies in Portugal, and a Louvre shut down in France. We ask because protests are sweeping Europe. This week, thousands of people have taken to the streets and locals have targeted mass tourism. But why? And does it even matter? Here is a report.
In Spain, squirt guns make their return to the streets of Barcelona. This week, thousands of locals gathered for protests. They walked along luxury boutiques and hotels, spraying tourists with water. Protests also rocked the popular Spanish resort islands of Mallorca, Menorca, and Ibiza. These islands have a population of just over 1 million. But last year, they hosted more than 15 million international tourists. So this week, people took to the streets and set off flares in protest. In Mallorca, locals stopped a double-decker tourist bus and hung protest banners on it.
We no longer hear birds, only airplanes. Everywhere you look, it's tourists. We no longer fit in cars and homes. We've lost our dignity.
But the disruption is not limited to Spain. In Italy's Genoa, demonstrators rolled suitcases down the city center streets in a noisy stroll tourism protest. In Venice, protesters denounced recently built hotels, which have replaced a public housing complex. In Portugal, locals protested with a handmade effigy of a patron saint in Lisbon. They carried it from his church to the site of a future five-star hotel. Anti-tourism protests have swept across many European countries. Ironically, in most of these places, tourism is hugely important to the economy. For instance, in Spain, tourism accounts for 12% of the GDP.
They don't want tourists in their city or what? Then they should tell the government to stop allowing tourists to come because tourists don't come here for free. It's expensive for tourists to come here.
But people are angry over the effects of mass tourism. They say that the crowds are growing so fast, locals are being squeezed out.
For a long time, we haven't been able to sustain the cost of living here. We can't buy houses, we can't rent, and the tourist overcrowding suffocates us. Today, we defend our rights as citizens.
Barcelona, like other European cities, is now beginning to be over the limit that can support the tourist industry. Many residents are having to leave the city, especially young people, because they cannot find affordable housing in Barcelona. While most of the protests are limited to southern Europe, smaller but theatrical protests have also taken place elsewhere. Like in France, yesterday, the world's most visited museum, the Louvre, was brought to a halt. Staff members refused to take up their posts. They boycotted work over unmanageable crowds in Mona Lisa's home. So the Louvre, which has withstood everything from wars to the pandemic, has crumbled under the weight of tourism. That fate is reserved for certain works of art. Like this Swarovski crystal-covered chair, inspired by one of Vincent van Gogh's most famous paintings at an Italian museum. Recently, a tourist sat on the chair while posing for a photograph, and the seat buckled under his weight. Vietnam witnessed something similar recently. A drunk, shirtless tourist broke an ancient throne and stirred up a storm in the country. Global travel has seen a 3% increase over pre-pandemic levels of 2019. Over the first 3 months of 2025, more than 300 million tourists have traveled internationally. That's about 14 million more than in the first quarter of 2024. Experts say that the numbers are only expected to increase. So a broken chair or a Louvre shutdown isn't a laughing matter anymore. Over-tourism is crippling cities and hurting locals. So without tangible change, the world should expect many more squirt guns on the streets.
For our last story tonight, let's talk about air fryers, the cooking appliances. They make food crunchy without deep frying it. And slowly but surely, they have cooked their way into our hearts. Air fryers are now an $8 billion global market. But did you know this? Air fryers don't just make delicious French fries, they also make for fancy snooping devices. That's right, your air fryer is not just cooking for you, it could be spying on you as well. And we are not the ones saying this, a UK-based data privacy watchdog is. The Information Commissioner's Office, or ICO. The regulator has issued a guidance. It says that air fryers should respect people's right to privacy. Air fryers should respect people's right to privacy. That's a sentence we never thought we would hear. Here's some context. A few months ago, a consumer group held an investigation. They tested air fryers in the UK, and here's what they found. The fryers were quote-unquote stuffed with trackers. You see, air fryers today are not like old-timey kitchen appliances. Many of them are smart devices. These air fryers are connected to the internet. They are linked to phones via apps. So users don't just push buttons. They tell air fryers what to do. People schedule meals even when they're not at home. This is expected to make life easier. But it also means that the fryers are designed to listen in. They record your voice. They ask for your exact location. They record your interactions even when it is not required. They capture your family's conversations. They gather your personal data. And there is, and I'm quoting, excessive surveillance. This is what the investigation says. What's even worse is the data is not stored in the fryer. It is sent to data servers, which are often located in some other country. In the case of these air fryers, the location was China. That is where the data went. Many of the fryers tested were made by Chinese companies, so the personal data recorded was being sent to data centers in China. This sounds like inviting foreign spies into your home, letting them spend time with your family, your children, without having any idea about what is going on. Needless to say, this is a major privacy concern, and it leaves users completely powerless. So now the UK's watchdog is pulling up air fryer companies, demanding that they regularly delete information and become transparent with consumers. And of course, this is not limited to air fryers. It applies to smart speakers, watches, or TVs. After all, smart products are everywhere. They are a $43 billion global market, and they know all kinds of things about us. The music we like, what our family members sound like when visitors are home, and what medication we take. They know all of this. And companies have access to all this information and more. And what do they do with it? Firms say they need the data to make their devices better. But it goes deeper than that. Often there are allegations of data theft, of employees taking advantage of user data, of information being sold to advertisers, and even being hacked. There are innumerable stories. Last year, hackers got control of robot vacuums in the US. These vacuums had cameras and audio function, so hackers got access to videos of people's homes and yelled obscenities at owners. Smart doorbells have also come under fire. Experts say that they can be hacked easily. Amazon workers have also been accused repeatedly of listening to conversations through Alexa speakers. I could go on, but the fact is, all kinds of tech companies are pillaging our data. So what can be done about it? Sure, one watchdog in one country issuing one guidance helps. It is a move in the right direction, but it is not enough. We have to be more vigilant as consumers. Check if products have a physical switch for voice recording. Read the privacy policy and be picky about who gets your data and how much of it. That said, this is not just a consumer problem. Yes, it pays to be careful, but consumers should not have to choose between ease and privacy. This is a regulation issue. So policymakers have to step up. Demand transparency from companies. Know where user data is going, how it is being used, and take action to protect people. Because with every breath we take, every move we make, and every meal we fry, someone is probably watching us. Move over Trump sneakers and baseball bats. Let me introduce the Trump smartphone. And I'm not making this up. The US president's sons have launched a new mobile company. It is selling a Trump-branded phone. So naturally, the phone is gold in color. It also features an American flag on the back. What about costs? The phone will sell for $499. You can also get a special data plan for $47.45. So specific, isn't it? Well, Trump is the 47th and the 45th American president, hence the data plan costs $47.45. Again, I'm not making this up, and we haven't even told you the best part yet. The company says these phones will eventually be made in America. So most experts believe the first batches will be made in China. I wonder what tariffs will apply to these phones. And now it's time for Vantage Shots, images that tell the story. Italian Prime Minister Giorgia Meloni's eye roll goes viral after her conversation with French President Emmanuel Macron at the G7. A new video captures the exact moment when a Russian drone hits a Kiev apartment building and Cristiano Ronaldo signs a jersey for Donald Trump. Finally, we're taking you back in history. On this day in 1885, the Statue of Liberty arrived in New York City. It was a gift to the US from France. The statue arrived in 350 individual pieces, individual parts, in over 200 boxes. It was then reassembled and displayed as a symbol of freedom and democracy in the US. We're leaving you on that note. Thank you for watching. We'll see you tomorrow.
Firstpost now available in 9 languages on YouTube. English,
Stands at $36 trillion.
French,
Le FMI, comme
German,
Geschäftsführenden Direktor
Hindi,
$30 trillion ka karjo.
Indonesian,
Pemerintah tanpa pemeriksaan.
Italian,
Sekali radikali.
Japanese,
$4 trilhão.
Portuguese,
Por causa do próprio balanço patrimonial.
Spanish.
Beautiful bill.
Go to Settings, click on Audio Track and select the language of your choice. Be the first to know what's happening around you in your first language. Firstpost.